Hey, Ebony.
Hi, Anthony. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
I'm trying to connect you. Well, I guess I don't need it. You hear me. I was going to put you on my headset, but
Oh, yeah, it sounds normal to me.
okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Miss Melvin.
Hello. Hi, Ebony. Hi, Anthony.
Hi,
How
Tasha.
are you?
How you doing?
I am well. Enjoying this day. So nice out.
I haven't been outside today since this morning.
It was very cool this morning. It did get a little hot for me a while ago, but I will take this over what has been going on.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mhm.
And thank you again, Anthony, for
Look, I didn't even get to do my favor to you. It
I
was
know.
already on the works.
Yes, maybe about 10 minutes after I spoke to you, he called back. He's like, I'm so sorry I got pulled into a meeting. I said, well, Anthony's gonna do it. He's like, oh no, I got it. I'll tell Anthony. I said, okay, thank you.
Good, good.
So I appreciate it.
No
I was
worries.
rambling. I didn't want to waste all of my time trying to figure out how to put the information in the forms. I was like, let me just reach out.
Yep, good. Welcome, Abena. How are you today? She may be multitasking. Ebony, I have one kind of favor. Um, my presentations have Colin in the middle of them.
Oh yeah, we did that already. I'm putting you together.
Thank
35
you.
minutes. Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes. I have it here. I'm gonna put my phone so I can set my timer. We're gonna put it together.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We still got folks coming in. Welcome, Eliza and Sharita.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
I am doing all right. It's a busy week.
Yes,
We
it
got,
is.
we got interns finishing the summer, and I'm like, I know it's busy when I'm texting myself to remind myself things.
Well, Eliza, that now I'm curious. Do we have an intern that's going to continue on, or is everybody
Um,
leaving in the summer?
we talking about specifically to HSAC?
Remember, I thought Quincy was the summer her extension, or was she talking about extending beyond the summer?
I at one point I think had mentioned something, but I have not followed up on that and haven't heard
Okay.
about it. So, um, I will have to check in with Quincy and also our office because I know we have funding for undergrads
Yeah,
and PhD students. I'm not sure we have funding for masters,
got it. Okay.
which is a little bit of a change than
Yep.
what I initially thought. But I can write it down and follow up for sure.
No worries. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We got lots of folks coming in.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Good
How are
afternoon,
you all?
everybody. Good afternoon. Lloyd, welcome. It's great to see you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is great. There are lots of folks joining, so uh, give us a sec.
Yes, welcome everybody. We will get started soon. Give folks a few minutes to enter, get settled, reach quorum.
Sharita, can you hear me? You may be multitasking.
You said well, I am. I'm
Okay.
multitasking.
I was gonna ask for a little bit of clarification. You told me it was okay to share the SOAR information or not okay?
I didn't think it was a problem for us to share it.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Great turnout today. We got a lot of folks joining us. Good afternoon, all. Welcome, welcome. We are giving others a chance to join before we get started.
Anthony, are you also watching quorum for us today? You got all the tasks. I'm looking for someone else from the city.
Um, I wasn't, but I am happy to. I
So I'm
may
seeing
need some
someone
help
else.
from Colin on that though.
Yeah, maybe Colin just popped on.
Yeah.
Come here, sorry.
Anthony, would it be
uh,
helpful in terms of counting quorum if those of us that are actually HSAC members put HSAC or something behind our names, and then you'd know who counts toward quorum?
That would help for me, yes.
That, yeah.
That would help for me, absolutely.
Yeah, so now I'm like, how do I rename myself? There we go. Okay, so for those of you that are looking to rename yourself, the 3 dots on your screen where your face is, you can click on them, and at the bottom it says rename.
I'm sorry about that. I had to step away from the call really quickly.
And we still have 1 or 2 more coming in, so
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry, my video is going in and out.
No problem. Glad you're
over.
here. We should be getting close to quorum.
I think I'm counting 13.
I'm double checking you, Russ, right now, but I think you're right.
I like this idea, Russ. The
This would have been good 2 years ago for the secretary keeping attendance, just saying. Should have had a good idea 24 months ago. Yep.
You're just, leaving gifts for folks in
There
the
you go.
future. So we appreciate you. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Eliza Matthew. I'm the current chair of HSAC, but not for too long. Thank you for joining us today. Just a few, I'm calling this August 14th meeting to order at 3:05 p.m. Just a few housekeeping items. Please check the chat, fill out the sign-in form. Someone will be dropping that in the chat for us. So whether you're an HSAC member or not, it's really helpful. Please sign in on that form. That should be coming in the chat soon. Other reminders, stay muted unless you're coming off mute to speak. For questions, raise your virtual hand. And we'll call on you, and you can also drop questions in the chat. Great. So let me see if I can find the sign-in form for us.
If you don't find it, Eliza, I'll look. I'm still admitting folks, so
Okay.
I will check for it
Yes.
in a little while. We'll go again with the signing.
Yeah. It used to be in the calendar invite, but I'm noticing this year it is not. So I don't have direct access to it. So when you get a chance, just drop it in. That'd be helpful. Thank you, Anthony.
Okay.
All right. We'll move along to public comment. I didn't get any notice that someone signed up ahead of time. Colin or Anthony, do y'all know of anybody?
I'm not aware.
I'm gonna go check the smart sheet right now, but as far as I know, I'm not aware of any. But I will double check. If somebody's signed up, please just raise your hand and I can confirm it.
Right, I'm not seeing anybody, but I'll let you keep checking. This is a public meeting, so if there's anyone here today that wants to give a public comment, you can raise your hand.
I think, Jason, did you raise your hand?
I'm sorry, one of my colleagues was in the hall and I was waiting for him. Sorry.
Just a hello.
The timing was so perfect.
All right, Colin, you didn't see any on your end either, I'm assuming. So let's keep it moving.
Yep.
Next on our agenda is the Policy and Planning Quarterly Report. That will come from our chair of that standing committee, who's Sharita McCullers.
Hello, everybody. I hope you have had a great July off and are ready to gear up. It looks like it from the numbers of folks who are with us today. So as far as our policy and planning update, we have been engaged in some conversations around white flag over the last 3 to 4 months. Our white flag plan specifically for 24-25. We have worked on coordinated entry, prioritization changes. Some things are being worked on, and we had a robust discussion about the medically fragile in our community and kind of like what our response needs and challenges are for that population of people. We also had some conversations as a kind of secondary area of focus from the medically fragile discussion about emergency shelter prioritization. And so there is actually a series of meetings going on right now for us to come up with a new way of implementing emergency shelter stays based on the realities of some people's ability to be able to self-resolve their homelessness in 30 days due to health impairments and things like that. And then in June, we had a robust conversation about our funding priorities for HUD and the COC specifically. And I think staff will be talking more about that in this meeting today. The last thing I kind of wanted to bring up is that we have been engaging with our lead group, our lived experience group on a regular basis in policy and planning over the last 3 to 4 months. And we've been getting some great insights from them. And one area of focus that came up in our May meeting was about how events in our communities impact people's hotel stays. And so we have some folks that we're not able to serve who at different times of the year, we noticed that our numbers go up and they fluctuate to very high numbers. And what the lead team was able to determine is that this happens around some key events in our community. Basketball games, Colin, if I forget one of the things, graduations, and
Festivals.
big concerts, festivals, the rates in the hotels go up. If our folks are staying in certain hotels, they may be asked to leave during those spans of time and are not even able to stay in the hotel they had been staying in just because, these are opportunities for the hotels in our community to make money. So they want to make money. And so our folks are not paying oftentimes the rates or are not able to pay the rates. So they are losing out on the opportunity for bed. So that's why we see some spikes around certain times with our coordinated entry numbers. And I think it's just something to think about. I think without that feedback from our lead group, I don't know if we would have ever really thought about it. So those are kind of the things that we've done over the last 3 to 4 months. Thank you very much. I don't know if I missed anything, Colin. You're free to add.
Any questions? Thanks so much, Sharita. Oh. Yes, go ahead, Dorothy. Quick question.
Yes, the first question I had was, would we be able to go to certain hotels and possibly get a contract with them that we will rent, we would basically host their available rooms. I know a lot of hotels have rooms that they are not able to fill. And I know of some of them that don't mind doing a contract where they could be able to accommodate a certain amount of rooms to fill for availability, because they would at least have these rooms filled and not be concerned with filling the rooms with clients. So that's one idea I had, because, and I don't even know, do we even have a contract with these hotels that are kicking the residents out?
So we don't. To answer your question, we don't have contracts. And I don't know, maybe Ebony can kind of fill in, because I think the only place that has like an agreement, the only system in our system that has some kind of agreement with the hotel to honor some beds is Ebony Thomas with Durham Public Schools McKinney-Vento. This was a topic that we discussed when we were discussing this, and I don't think it's anybody that's been able to negotiate a contract to be able to like get a guarantee that rooms will be held. And then the other part of that is that some of these people are not even on our radar. We have no clue, like what families or singles are staying, like that's their livelihood and that's how they're making ends meet. There's a lot of people we don't know. Those people don't always necessarily call in and coordinated entry. They're just surviving. So it would be very difficult for us to even attempt to even track that, just because we don't know who's there.
Okay, and I have one last question, if it's okay if I ask that question. Well, I just want to first say, I think it would be a benefit for the hotel. I'm not sure about the contract. Maybe I got to read more on it. I'm sorry, about the program that you mentioned. I probably have to do more research on what it entails. So I apologize for my lack of knowledge on that particular subject. But I also felt, and believe this is my personal opinion, that it's the state responsibility to accommodate its homeless people. I know we have places like Durham Recovery and stuff like that, but those are non-profit agencies. And I feel like it's the state responsibility to make sure that it's North Carolina homeless residents have somewhere to live. So are we looking into that, to put that into the budget? Like I said, I'm not familiar on this. This is just a random question, but are we looking at to have state-funded shelters for the homeless citizens in North Carolina, particularly Durham?
Colin, I'm gonna defer that response to you. Dorothy, I'm with you. I feel like we should be doing something, but Colin, I'm deferring to you.
Sure. Are you talking about weather-related shelters, Dorothy, or just cold weather?
Well, I'm talking about
pieces.
shelters. Homeless people need a place to live, right? Just like everyone else needs a place to live every day.
Sure.
So there's 365 days. Everyone needs to lay their head on the bed every single day.
Mhm.
So because the homelessness is high in North Carolina, particularly Durham and Raleigh, the city, the urban areas, why are we not going to, I know the mayor says we get a budget. I know every state gets a budget. Why are we not putting that in there to, when the budget comes around, to fund state-funded shelters for our residents, our homeless residents?
So there's emergency solutions grant money that comes from the state that could fund this. The amount of money that we get from the state for emergency solutions grant that could fund emergency shelter is $170,000. The amount of money the city of Durham gets directly from HUD for emergency solutions grant is also about $170,000. So you got about $350,000 that we can use in our system for street outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, or homeless management information system. We, as a continuum, have used that money for the bulk of it for rapid rehousing to get people out of homelessness into permanent housing. Later in today's meeting, we will be talking about awarding the state ESG money, and some of that will be going to help cover emergency shelter costs. Part of the issue is there's capacity challenges with the space that we have for in the emergency shelters. There are a limited number of beds. Right now, there are 50 beds available for homeless men and 15 beds for homeless women. There are currently 70, as of last Monday, there were 78 people on a waiting list for those 65 total beds available. So we, in the cold weather months, we as the city use city funds to stand up additional cold weather shelter. And we do that cold weather shelter where we have used hotels in the past, which gets very expensive. And to your point, hotels are willing to rent you the rooms for a month at a time. And it's a very expensive proposition for about 10 rooms. This year, we're hoping that we can spread that out. And at least during the cold weather season, the plan is to work with a local church to do a congregate setting for a more cost-effective approach to serve more than 10 households at a time. The goal would be able to sort of have it as a drop-in and serve as many as we can get in on those cold weather nights. So we're doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have. The city itself puts several $1 million a year into the homeless system for a variety of homeless options, as does the county. It's just the need far exceeds the financial resources that are available. And it's not just a Durham and Wake issue. It's a countrywide issue that we as I speak, it's the collective we as a society, we as voters have allowed us to say as a society, it's okay for us to have X percentage of people not have access to homes, not have access to adequate health care, not have access to all of the other pieces that go with this. And homelessness, while it is a problem, is really a symptom of the larger societal failures and generations of inequities. So until we're able to address the medical health, the health piece, the education and generation wealth gaps, we're going to continue to have homelessness.
Thanks, Colin. And thank you,
you.
Dorothy and Sharita. I'm going to keep us moving. This is a really great conversation. So if y'all want to continue offline, drop emails in the chat and y'all can continue the conversation. We have a packed agenda and I want to make sure we get to items. But this conversation can certainly continue offline. So please share your information with each other. I want to keep us moving. All right. Next on our agenda is the chair transition. There's no like special hold on, I'm reading the chat. I see. There's no like special handing of the baton. I just want to quickly share. I'm really excited for Ebony to take on chair. It's been a pleasure getting to know her over this year. And then also from my end, I'm not going anywhere, so I'm not going to say a ton of words. I'm still going to continue being a part of HSAC, and I'm working on stewarding forward work around governance that will report to exec team. I just want to say a big thank you to many of you who are willing to meet with me, to share your knowledge with me, to help me learn, and were patient with me as I asked a million questions. And I just really appreciate each of you for being willing to do that. This is like homelessness work is not what I do every day. And it's been a wonderful learning experience. And I'm really, really grateful for folks that helped me through this process. So just wanted to say that, and then we'll pass over to Ebony for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Eliza. Thank you for your help with this new role. It's an honor and a pleasure to serve as the chair of HSAC. So with that, we'll move along to the elections of officers. Are there any nominations for the vice chair and secretary? Okay, there is a current nomination for Reverend Renee Vaughn, Vice Chair, and Miss Colleen Herbert, Secretary. I would like to entertain a motion for the slate of officers.
I move to accept the slate as presented. This is
I
Helen.
second. This is Sharita.
Thank you. All in favor, if you can vote yes or no, or abstain if needed in the chat. And also there is a issue with the sign-in link. If you could also put your name, first and last name in the chat as well, that way we can have record of who is present. Thank you. And then at this time, I would like to allow space for Reverend Renee Vaughn to introduce herself and share anything that she would like for the HSAC members and community to know about her, and also Miss Herbert when she is finished. Reverend Vaughn, are you available to share?
She mentioned some technical difficulties, maybe jump to
Okay.
Ms. Herbert and then come back.
Okay. Ms. Herbert?
Good afternoon. Thank you all for thinking I'm worthy to serve as secretary, coming behind Mr. Pierce as secretary, but have the pleasure to serve as staff or an administrator at North Carolina Central University. And so my focus has been to look at youth and homelessness since I've been tasked to serve on the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. And hopefully I'll do the same job as Russ did so that you all can have the information recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations, Ms. Herbert. Reverend Vaughn, are you available? Or are you able?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was had to step away for a moment. Yes, I am very interested in serving as vice chair. My primary focus in the last few years has been working in the community with homeless populations and perhaps finding some unusual ways of supporting those populations. I've enjoyed my term. This is my second term on HSAC, and I've enjoyed working with everyone and would like to continue.
Thank you. And congratulations to you as well as our new vice chair. So we're going to move along to the approval of minutes. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the June minutes? If so, please share any changes or corrections at this time. Are there any changes or corrections to the June minutes? If not, I would like to make a motion to approve June minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve June minutes. This is Eliza Matthew.
And this is Sharita. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please indicate in the chat yes or no, or abstain if you need to. We're going to move to our next presenter, with this Anthony Henderson. He is going to share ESGs and HUD funding opportunities at this time. We have 35 minutes, Mr. Anthony.
I promise you I won't need all that time, and I'm sure you all are grateful for that. 1 second as I share my screen. I want to talk about two things today. Hopefully you can see a screen that says community development as a presentation. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our in-process ESG competition, state ESG competition, and also we'll be asking your approval for those recommendations that will be advanced in the process of this discussion. And then immediately following that, I will give out some early info on the HUD COC competition, which has just been released within the last 2 weeks. And more information is still coming out about it. Some is recent, for example, as yesterday. So we'll get started with the state ESG. As you know, this happens every year. This year it was announced in June 11th, and we announced it in the COC on the 17th. We got 4 people to agree to form an evaluation subcommittee, which is the group that will be responsible or was responsible for reviewing the project applications. They came from our performance management committee, 1 lead agency staff, and we had an alternate, which was a City of Durham intern, who has done some work with the homeless team. Those evaluation team members received a detailed presentation prior to the review period and 6 office hour sessions. They were not available to meet for the orientation, so we issued a presentation, and then we formed 6 office hour sessions to support the review process. I think it went pretty well. If anybody wants to comment on that, please feel free to jump in. We also provided a revised 2024 scorecard, which attempted to simplify the instructions, the scoring, and the math calculations. We also got some good feedback on that. Thankfully, this year we got 4 eligible applications. In 2023, there was only 1. So we're grateful to see an increase in people coming back to this competition for funding. 1 applicant is new to the Durham COC, having just joined us in May. And as well, we entertained 1 new project, which everyone was really excited about. You'll hear more about it in a little bit. And then following those evaluations, initial funding recommendations were developed and then revised with feedback from reviewers and after consulting with the state ESG office. So the process to get to the funding recommendations, the evaluation subcommittee completed the scoring and had initial discussions. In some cases, we had to go back to applicants to get clarification on questions related to the project that may not have been apparent in their project descriptions. We had to talk to applicants about potential budget changes. For example, if you ask for $80,000, but we can only give you 30, will you be able to accomplish your project and things like that. So we worked with them to ensure the projects were viable at the funding levels recommended. We took that recommendation to the Performance Management Committee. And after additional conversations, we came up with the following recommendations. So today, we're seeking the HSAC approval on those recommendations. Immediately after this meeting, if HSAC approves, the applicants will be notified and given a right to appeal the funding decisions. And if necessary, HSAC will review the executive committee of HSAC will review those recommendations and have them final by August 22nd. And then we submit our regional application the following week. So I want to talk to you about the initial funding recommendations and then the final. These are, I'm not sure if you all can see these. I'm going to try to make them a little bigger. These are the applications that we received. And we were grateful, again, for the presence of 4 applications. 1 applicant, Housing for New Hope, requested funding in 2 categories. There were 5 activities proposed overall. As you can see, there was $170,000, 260 available. We initially split that 50-50 between the 2 categories, emergency services and housing stability. just for reference, emergency services covers like shelter operations and street outreach, where housing stability covers like rapid rehousing and HMIS and things like that. So, the applications came in, and for emergency services, we got requests at 270% of what was available. And for housing stability, we got 140% of what was available. So it was a good, robust competition and some great discussions that followed. After, you can see in the footnotes, and those are what I'm going to go to now. Housing for New Hope was initially recommended for funding in both categories. However, they have some opportunities that they're looking to pursue. And so they have withdrawn their request for support from this competition. And that enabled the resources to be deployed to other agencies. Also, initially we wanted to have an allocation for Open Table Ministry. However, after consulting the state ESG office related to project readiness, the subcommittee suggested that the agency resubmit for future funding when there were more details available about how the project would operate. So everybody was really excited about that project, which was a safe parking lot in Durham for people to who are experiencing vehicular homelessness, to have a safe place to park. But there were not enough details for what we believe the state to have approved that application. And then finally, the new player in the game, Family Promise of the Triangle or Family Promise of Wake County. They have entered the Durham space. They have come in kind of guns blazing, taken some rapid rehousing referrals already just in the past couple of months of their membership. They actually requested $34,000, but since Housing for New Hope withdrew their application, we were able to talk to them, and they are able to take on the remaining portion of the money that is available to the Durham COC. So in effect, this causes us to be able to apply for a full allocation, and it allows for the two organizations that are being funded to get either their full ask or above their full ask. So that is the summary of the funding allocations. And here is the actual snapshot of the regional budget, which is what we're asking you to approve, which is the funding in the way that you see it here of the state ESG allocation. So we're basically asking for families moving forward to receive $64,600 for shelter operations, and Family Promise of Wake County will receive $105,660, 15 of which is for rapid rehousing services. The remainder would be for financial assistance provided to rapid rehousing households. So Ebony, I guess we would take a vote around this, or a motion to approve these recommended funding levels for the state ESG.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you for this very detailed presentation. I do have some specific questions around Family Promise of Wake County. You mentioned that they had taken on some rapid rehousing clients here. Are they currently actively participating in our COC and our by name list meetings?
They are. As a matter of fact, since they joined in May, they've been to just about every by name list meeting. However, the COC one is a bit tricky, and I have to explain it in our regional application because we've only had one, which was the June meeting since they joined. And when they joined, they were added to the COC distribution list under .com instead of .org on their email. So they did not get the notice to attend the June COC meeting. And then there wasn't one in July. So the email address has been rectified, and of course, the new signups have been sent out for, the new Zoom links were sent out to the COC. But they have participated faithfully in the binding list meeting.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Will we ever have an opportunity to hear from, speak to, learn more about Family Promise of Wake County and their aspirations for the work here in Durham County? Just because, when I see new people come in, I just want to make sure that they understand the community, they know the lay of the land, they, know faces and things like that. So, because we want, anybody who's coming to the table to do more work here, we want to make sure they're well connected and they get the support that they need so they can continue to do the work.
Thank you,
Because
Sharita.
we
I
need
want to
help.
ask Jeffrey to weigh in just because he leads the by name list meetings. And so Jeffrey, I don't know if you want to make any remarks here.
Sure. I will say this, although they're listed as Family Promise of Wake County, they have rebranded themselves as Family Promise of the Triangle. And coming in, they've come in immediately accepting referrals. They're actively participating. They are involved with the landlord engagement group as far as working to acquire landlords. They're actively doing case management. So they've hit the ground running. They're asking the right questions. They are connecting with the right partners. They're connecting with landlords, and they actually already have some landlords locally. And Julia, I think Julia asked a question in the chat about their emergency shelter. Their emergency shelter is open to the Triangle, that being Wake, Durham, and Orange.
Russ, I think you have a question. You have your hand up.
No, just a comment of encouragement. I mean, I want to say we're very excited to see Family Promise of the Triangle come over because of past experience with them from Wake. And I think one of the things that maybe we experienced going back 4 or 5 years ago, organizations would come in from outside Durham and really struggle, but we've tripled the size of the lead agency staff at this point, and I think are set up in a very different way than we were back then. And so I'm already just what Jeffrey's sharing, it already sounds like we're better supporting other agencies coming in. And especially if we have a high performing agency coming in, that's really encouraging. So appreciate what the lead agency is doing to support them and help us expand capacity here.
Thank you, Russ. And I must say, this is my first time out, and the agencies who have applied have been amazing to work with. And I really want to thank Russ. Russ was so gracious and patient with me in having these conversations for the first time about, look, we want to give you this money, but how do we do it? And how can we make it work? And so Russ was really patient in helping me learn the ropes. So thank you, Russ.
Anthony, there are a few questions in the chat.
Okay, I can't see the chat while I have the presentation up, so can you read them to me or somebody?
Sure. One of the questions is, will Entry Point receive referrals for Family Promise? Are we referring families to Family Promise?
Yes.
Yes, they receive Family Promise of the Triangle has to honor all of the Durham COC policies the way every other agency does. So all of their referrals will come through Entry Point. Jeffrey, if I misspeak, please jump in, but I think that's the way it works.
If I may jump in for one moment, Family Promise of the Triangle came to us because they received, I believe, a Bezos type grant, a lot of money for this region. They came to us and said, hey, we've got money for the Triangle. We want to do rapid rehousing in Durham. How do we help you with some of this money that we got? And they came and approached us with money that they had received from another source to help us in our neighborhood, which was really cool. So it was great for I don't want to say the first time, but it's rare that a group says, I've got money and I'm coming to use my money in your neighborhood. A lot of times it's, I've got resources, but I need money to do this. So they brought money and then they applied to come in and expand what they're currently doing. So I just wanted to share that that's how they came to us, and why these referrals are using private money. They're not using ESG. They're not using COC money. These are private foundation monies that they applied for and were awarded.
Thank you, Colin. Great points.
The next question is there something that, I don't think Entry Point is giving out their number. Is that something that can happen if we have large unsheltered numbers?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Say it again, please.
I'm assuming they're asking about Family Promise. I don't think Entry Point, no. You're muted, Colin.
So Family Promise can only accept referrals through our coordinated entry system. So
Gotcha.
somebody who's unsheltered can't call Family Promise and enter. They have to go through the coordinated entry process and prioritization.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I think the question though is, are families now being directed to
Yes.
to the
Through
new
coord-
agency?
Yes, they've already received 4 or 6 referrals that they're currently working with.
I think they're referring to the emergency shelter. They have a 12-bed emergency shelter system there. It is full and has been full since they came on, but I can also ensure with Nicole at Entry Point that the number is still being given out as a resource. Just that so far there's not been an available bid, but I will make sure that the number is also still shared since it is a potential for people to go there.
Thank you. And that's all we have for the chat, Anthony.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a motion and to approve the funding recommendations?
This is Eliza Matthew. I'll make a motion to approve the 2024 North Carolina ESG funding recommendations.
This is Renee Vaughn. I will second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, please vote in the chat. I'm so sorry. Or abstain if you need to.
Thank you. Do we have, Ebony, do we have the results? Are we good to go with the approval?
Yes, we
Perfect.
have, yes. You need the number?
No, we're good. If it's approved, it's approved. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you all, and hopefully, we will move on right now to some conversation about the COC collaborative application. So I just want to give you, a little bit of information here. We did register on time this year and return our grant information worksheets by the deadline. So everything is good for us to proceed with the application process. We also have formed an initial review committee. We have 4 people signed up, and we are looking for an additional 2 to 3 reviewers for this process. I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline coming up, draft timeline. We also will be gearing up for our fall evaluations of performance for agencies participating. That happens later this month and will help with the ranking process for the COC collaborative application. HSAC, this body, must approve that final application, so we will be asking for your authorization at the end of this presentation to allow that to occur via an email poll, because the dates of the meetings don't necessarily coincide well with the timeline. So we will ask to seek your approval for an email vote on the rankings and funding recommendations for this competition. It will be due, the collaborative application part will be due by October 30th at 8 p.m. So as you know, HUD started about a month late this year, and so they have added a month to the deadline for us to apply. We sent out the NOFO to the COC list on August 12th, which was a couple of days ago, for folks to start reviewing it. I did want to highlight a couple of changes to this year's NOFO. Some changes are occurring to the tiering. Tier 1 is going to be now 90% of our annual renewal demand. I believe last year it was 93%, so that is a little bit lower. This NOFO will cover 2 years now instead of 1. So this application will be for this year and next year. DV bonus reallocations must now serve the same subpopulation. So any agency that might take on reallocated funds for DV must serve DV clients, or be willing to serve DV clients. Also, any new domestic violence projects that apply must be 100% dedicated to serving that population. And last but not least, HUD may make reasonable COLA, cost of living adjustments to renewal amounts next year, sorry for that typo, to offset inflation. So because we're not applying annually and it's moving to every 2 years, they have given themselves the right to increase our award next year by a cost of living adjustment. It looks like Tasha might have a question. I see your hand, Tasha, or a comment.
I do. Just around the DV bonus and the subpopulation. So does that change the prioritization, or is it still households experiencing domestic violence, fleeing domestic violence, and then we go down?
That is a great question, Colin. I think it's going to still be the same, right?
Yes, if we
Okay.
don't have applicable households, generally speaking, HUD does not want you to sit there and not spending funds. The goal is to use it for those fleeing and history of domestic violence. And then if you don't have those, then to use for the next most appropriate group.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a great question. Anytime this comes up, we can also seek clarity as well. So I think, of course, what Colin is saying is correct, but I also encourage you to read the NOFO they have a section on page 5 around specific subpopulations. So you can check it there too, just to make sure that you're comfortable with what the language says. And if not, we can get any additional clarification you might need. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what might be available for the COC this year. I apologize again, this is my first time doing this, so I hope that this makes sense. And there are some calculation adjustments that might be made to this, but for right now, we know our renewal demand is $2,017,000. The COC bonus is possible this year at 12% of the annual renewal demand. So that adds in about another possible $242,000. In addition to a DV reallocation of $302,000, which is included in our ARD, there is an additional potentially 15% DV bonus project that we can entertain as well this year. And then finally, the COC planning application as a part of this is 5% of the annual renewal demand. So when you look at what all those things total, it comes out to right at about 2.6 million, a little over 2.6 million. That is possible for our COC this year. Are there any questions so far? My last slide is going to be the draft timeline, but before we get into the timeline, I want to make sure we're all good to go on anything that's been presented so far.
Anthony, there are no questions in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Ebony. All right. So the last slide, I know this one's going to be a little more difficult to see. This is our timeline. So as you can see, we're at August 14th. The announcement at the HSAC meeting is happening as we speak. Our next goal is to get all of this information posted to our website. and then open Zoom grants to project applications. We will be leading a application workshop in about 10 days, hosted by us here, by me. By August 31st, it will be the deadline for written questions sent to Durham Opening Doors. The following week will be the deadline for us to post answers. And then September 20th is the date targeted right now for project applications due in Zoom grants. Now, I do call this timeline a draft at the top. Whenever I do that, we kind of reserve the right to alter the timeline if we figure out that something's kind of off, but we typically will try to never do that at the detriment of an agency that is seeking to apply. So if anything, you may realize that you have 1 or 2 extra days to apply versus 1 or 2 fewer days to apply. So following the applications on September 20th, we will have our subcommittee complete their scoring and propose rankings. And then by October 9th, we will get HSAC's approval of those ranking and funding recommendations, inform the projects, go through all of the necessary processes again. And by October 30th, we will submit the collaborative application. So that is our draft timeline. You can expect more and also more clarification of any information as needed in the coming week or two, both at our website and in the application workshop that we will host in the next week and a half. Are there any questions for me? I love this group. Thank you so much for not having so many questions. And hopefully this means that you've gotten the information you need, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
And I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing, so give me 1 second.
No problem.
Here we go.
Thank you, Anthony. At this time, we're going to turn it over to Colin to talk about the eviction protection grant.
Thank you so much. We, the city, are applying to HUD for an eviction protection grant, which is due next Tuesday, and are asking the HSAC for a letter of support to go towards that. I put in the information that I sent out to all of you, some bullets on a high level of what this grant is proposing to do. And I'll walk you through a little more detail in a moment. But essentially, the background is several years ago, 21 and 22, HUD put out an eviction protection grant, and the awardees were mostly legal aids, legal societies, legal groups who are providing court or representation to tenants who are facing eviction in courts. HUD decided to release a NOFO this year and made some changes to it based on, I guess, experiences and things they were seeing. And what they were seeing is that in a lot of states, when an eviction is filed, that one goes into the court system, and that eviction filing often stays on people's records, making it harder for them, even if it's not seen all the way through. It doesn't always just drop off. There's still a record of something being filed in the court that will follow that household to the next unit and make it more difficult to rent. The other thing they found is that court is expensive and time consuming. So when you've got lawyers fighting things out in court, it takes time and it clogs up the judicial system for things that HUD believes could potentially be worked out further upstream. So this NOFO specifically said you've got to have the legal component, which we in the city of Durham do fund legal aid to provide tenant representation in eviction filings in court. We are looking to apply as a city to bring in other options for folks to help make the eviction, help reduce the number of evictions being filed in court. and to provide more upstream resources to try and resolve issues that are lease violations, whether it's non-payment of rent or other lease violations, to avoid items having to be filed in court. So if you give me a second, I can share my screen. And what we're going to look at here, if you can see this, is we're starting off sort of the overview. The goal is to reduce the number of evictions and the evictions filed in court. We're looking at moving further upstream, and as a rough order of magnitude, according to our data, Entry Point Durham is receiving 51 phone calls a week from households saying they're facing eviction in the next 14 days. Well, eviction and 14 days is a category 3 for homelessness, and our priority 1 are further upstream. So we're not we don't have the capacity to serve people who are at risk of eviction who might be homeless. So this grant would allow us to bring in some staff to help folks further upstream. It's important to note that fewer than 5% of evictions end up with people ending in the homeless system, based on the records that we can see. So Entry Point would essentially bring in some additional staff to work with, either provide supportive services or help people with the budgeting or help negotiate with landlords or help do something. And that staff could help gather paperwork as DSS is able to cut checks for one-time rent assistance. They've got roughly $1.3 million for one-time rent assistance, but there is a cap to that rent assistance. So if folks don't have the balance of anything above that rental cap that DSS is able to pay, VOA staff might be able to help people figure out resources or other ways to do this, or get paperwork in line if they're below the one-time rental assistance cap that DSS has in place. So the additional staff, one of the things DSS said is sometimes people can get their stuff together, they're eligible, but all the paperwork's not in order, or they're not able to get a consent and a release of information to go and speak to the landlord. So this is a place where this additional staff would be able to help expedite that so that the fees aren't going up every month, and we can speed this up to get people the one-time rent assistance before they exceed that rent cap. So we do know that there is a high number of eviction filings in Durham. And this system, because it's not going to be able to help everybody, because it's only $2.5 million maximum over 2 years. So we have to look at this and say, okay, how do we prioritize, and who are the households most likely to end up in really, really bad situations? So we do know statistically, people with a history of an eviction or history of homelessness are more likely to end up experiencing homelessness. So that would be our first priority to help, is the group of people who have a history of homelessness or other evictions on their records. The second priority is our very low income group, the households at or below 30% AMI, as we know that there just aren't many units out there that people below 30% AMI are able to move into to rent. And then the third is moving to 31 to 50% area median income. The grant does allow for assistance all the way up to 80% AMI, and that would be sort of the top tier last group that we would work with. Partners in this, because this is something the city would be applying for, North Carolina Legal Services, which is a local nonprofit legal firm. They are offering services to be partners of this. Housing for New Hope, part of their landlord engagement. Department of Social Services, HART, and Volunteers of America, which should have been in here. So Volunteers of America as part of the partners to make this project work. What would,
Colin,
yes,
I'm sorry, there's a question in the chat.
sure. So-
Sharita asked, are we looking at our community resources that could help us with some of this? And their capacity to free up for funds for financial assistance, for example, CEF.
I think all of it is on the table, Sharita. Like this is, we started putting it together with what we have about a month ago, trying to figure out what's in place. And yes, if this gets awarded, we'll be trying to pull more and more pieces together to figure out how to better make this work. And I think it's a great suggestion, bringing in CEF. Unfortunately, with this grant, I do have to put a little asterisk on it. This grant does not allow for any financial assistance to be paid. So you cannot pay rent arrears with any of this money. All of this money has to go for legal fees, mediation fees, supportive services fees, and associated like sort of costs to coordinate a system-wide response. So Entry Point Durham and DSS will sort of work together and use a triage tool. So we will be, because right now we do know people are calling both DSS for one-time rent assistance and Entry Point. Each of them have different screening tools for that questionnaire. Our goal is to get one questionnaire where people will be able to answer it based on your score. You'll get routed to the most appropriate services. And Volunteers of America will bring on additional staff to serve the highest barrier households who are facing eviction, to provide the supportive services and walk through the process with them. And Heart Team will come in as kind of the outlet valve, or to help some of those higher income groups that may need very short-term crisis intervention and not necessarily need, months, but sort of in the 30, 60, 90-day range is where we see Heart being able to sort of help fill some of that group. Probably most of the folks referred to Heart would be those who are in that 31 to 80% AMI, who need just a short-term help to work through some things. North Carolina Legal Services will be providing mediation services as an alternative to filing an eviction in court. We did hear from the Bloomberg Project that landlords were hungry for alternative solutions to adjudication when there were lease violations and other things leading to evictions. They were really looking for, we'll take high barrier households, but we need help, we need supportive services, we need something other than the court system to do this because it's costly and it's time consuming. So this was kind of a good way of checking some boxes that we heard feedback from that exercise, as well as lining up with what HUD has changed in the existing NOFO from last year, that moving further upstream and offering alternative dispute resolution to prevent the adjudication piece. Housing for New Hope will assist us with marketing the program through the Landlord Engagement Project. And that Landlord Engagement Project, as you know, is to prioritize and get landlords on board to assist high barrier households of folks who are exiting the homeless system. This eviction protection grant would be one more tool in that team's toolbox to go out and market, saying, hey, yes, we understand this. We want to use this as a tool to encourage landlords that they don't have to do the adjudication route if things go sideways and if supportive services don't work. There is another way. We have talked to at least 2 landlords in the area, and at least one landlord is submitting a letter of support for this, and that landlord currently has 850 units of housing and is excited about this alternative option, and has even indicated that they, depending on how it goes, may even put in lease addendums stating that mediation may be their preferred method to resolve lease disputes. So it's an exciting program. We'll see how it works. It's definitely different than what we have. The legal aid component will still be there for tenant representation in court should landlords determine they need to file an eviction, or should tenants decide they need to take legal action. That piece will be in place, but that legal aid contract will be funded through the city, as that's already something in place, and HUD has made it clear that we cannot use these funds to replace local funds for things. So this is a way of leveraging local dollars to hopefully get federal dollars to expand a program to provide a variety of options to various stakeholders in the community. And I think that's all I've got. So questions?
Looks like Dorothy has her hand raised.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Colin, for your service. I just want to say that you're a great contribution to this team and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
I know that you mentioned that the marketing service that they had, there's different organizations that are contributing to the marketing service. But correct me if I'm wrong, this is a preventive program from residents that are facing potential eviction.
So the goal in this, so yes, residents, our goal is that we want landlords, when they're thinking, ooh, I better go file an eviction, or I'm thinking I might need to do that, we're hoping landlords and tenants will reach out to this program before anything goes to court. We're hoping that we'll get landlords and landlords will be able to reach out directly to this program, and tenants will be able to reach out to this program. If the tenant receives a 5-day pay or quit, for instance, the tenant would be able to call us and go through the triage tool and determine, oh, is this a one-time rent assistance? Or is this another option that we have to do to answer these questions and work through how do we get this person to stay in this housing unit, at least to the end of the lease and hopefully longer. The goal is to preserve the relationships and help this. Does that answer your question, Dorothy?
Yes, and the last question I have is, we know everything is about awareness, right? It's like if you're not aware of something, you can't access it. So I think you kind of answered that question. But my question was, you kind of said the 2 programs that they will be available on, but that's what I think is the issue, the availability, especially from what I've learned in Durham residences. Sometimes they don't have access to the information. Sometimes they don't call DSS. I know a lot of them mentioned that they do call United Way 211. So would you think that'd be a good idea to put it on certain programs that most residents have access to or they're familiar with? And would there be posters, flyers in certain areas where we have high trafficking, homelessness, because exposure is everything. A lot of residents says, I didn't know about that program. That's great, but if I knew about it, I could access it. I could benefit from it.
Yes, absolutely. Great question. And that is one of the questions in this is, how will the program be marketed and marketed in multiple languages? So yes, we anticipate posters, flyers, working with landlords to hang on one second. The goal was to reach out to landlords in zip codes that have the highest eviction rates or eviction filings, and to really focus on them and to partner with anybody and see if we can get them to post information in their leasing offices, to provide letters or flyers or cards that if they send a tenant a 5-day pay or quit, the landlord, not in addition to that 5-day pay or quit notice, it's like, hey, if you're having a challenge, here's somebody you can call that might be able to help. And then also try and, as we're ramping up this program, to possibly go out and do some interventions, or not interventions, but to go through and do tenant education seminars, community meetings, if that's something that the landlords would be open to. So there is an outreach component that we need to reach landlords who know they can take a different route than going to court, And we need to make sure that tenants know that they've got an option as well. So even if the landlord doesn't reach out to us, the tenant could say, hey, I got this 5-day pair quit. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, property manager, could we go look at exploring mediation together and resolving this? I'm struggling. I don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to court. Let's see what we can do together. Or they call us and give us permission, or give, not me, us, meaning the program, a call, and let the program sort of initiate conversations between the two parties to bring them together.
Thank you, Colin. I think that's amazing. I think it's a great program. Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Colin, there's a
So-
couple of questions in the chat.
Yes.
One is this a HUD grant competition similar to the COC competition?
It's, Lloyd, no, it's not. It doesn't require individual applications like the COC application. It's a $40 million available across the country. And you can apply for up to 2.5 million, but you need to have MOUs and letters of support in place for any partner agencies. So that's where all these organizations, because the city itself does not do all this work, nor would the city necessarily, for $2.5 million, be able to do all of this work itself over 2 years when we've already got systems in place. It was, let's use what's already in place rather than reinventing the wheel.
And Sharita asked if a person had already used rent assistance, what might the program look like for them?
So that's a great question, Sharita. I don't have an answer to that. I think that's the piece where if people have already used rent assistance, then they would end up on that higher barrier list working with the VOA staff. And that VOA staff would be working to figure out what are the options that are available for that household. And the goal is to figure out that, you know, if they literally become homeless, then they would work through that. But we don't want people being homeless, and we don't want people to have to go through court. So it's going to be a lot of creative problem solving as we get to people have exhausted all the tools and been through the system multiple times. That those are going to be the highest and hardest to serve. So I think that's going to be the group that the VOA staff are going to be spending most of their time trying to solve. What do we do and how can we work this one out?
And the last question is there a possibility of the grant getting renewed? Like if we have good outcomes, might they renew it?
I don't know if there is a guaranteed renewal. The only thing I can go by is what I saw in the NOFO is this was put out in 2021 or 2022, and they are allowing people to apply for it again. So my gut says if HUD were to release another NOFO and we were successful, we would be able to apply again. If we do really, really well and HUD doesn't put it out again, then that's a question for you know, maybe the HSAC would take this forward to city and county to find a way to fund it on some level if it was really, really successful. I don't have an answer for how to keep it going outside of the 2 years. We got to win the grant and do really, really well with it, and then we can figure out the next steps after that. Other questions?
Colin, it's Jason.
Yeah, hey, Jason.
I don't know if this is a question, but it might be a little bit of a collective head scratcher.
Mhm.
And I know there were some things that came up in the Durham rent relief program that were kind of counterintuitive, at least as far as what I saw.
Mhm.
And where I'm going with this is I wonder if it might be a little counterintuitive, and if the goal is to prevent the adverse impact of a filing, court
Mhm.
filing, letting alone whatever the outcome of that is. The families who would benefit the most would be those that don't have any filings in the past.
Right.
Because I often see, you know, families with, you know, if you look at the North Carolina court system, you know, 5 instances of filings over the past, let's say 7 years. And even if they're all dismissed, it's very easy to obtain that information if you're a property owner who might rent the property. And let's say you're a young family who never had any filing. and is in a difficult position to keep any record of any filing whatsoever off that family's history might be more beneficial than preventing, let's say, the 6th filing in the past 8 years. I say it's head scratcher because we'd be standing in the shoes or the mindset of prospective property renters, but I just offer that as a thought. Again, if the goal is really upstream, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
to have the maximum benefit for families so they don't have this thing on their legal record, a clean slate, I think, is worth a lot. And it may be worth more than preventing, like I mentioned, the 6th filing or the 3rd filing or the 8th filing. So
That's a really, really good point, Jason. And we hadn't looked at it that way. So I think some of it was the eviction, keeping the eviction filing and keeping the people housed. So we were looking at it more on we want to avoid the eviction, getting on the record and keeping the people housed. So I think it's sort of, how do we do both? And I think you're right. I think that's I think we'll have to think through how do we operationalize that so that we're not building a system that only helps people who have multiple evictions. And I think we can work that through. It's a great point to think about, because once you get one, it's easy to get 2, 3, 4. And if we can keep you from getting the first, we might be able to keep you from getting a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
Russ?
I was just going to quick build on what Jason was sharing, even if we aren't awarded this, I would love for us to, particularly planning and policy, potentially to pick up a good conversation around some of this. I know even talking with folks from legal aid, they see pieces in the system that that if there were process improvements that the HCV office or parts of DSS or other pieces could really reduce the harm to families that are impacted by this. And so hopefully that's something that could be scheduled at some point on our committee plates to really dig in on what things can be done. Because I think you're uncovering a lot of good stuff exploring this, and even without the resources, there are pieces we could address, certainly with support from even city and county funding potentially in the future.
Colin, there's one more question from Dorothy. What can we do to make those proceedings private, being that harmful and increase in family chances of remaining homeless?
I am not an attorney. Jason, I don't know that you can make eviction filings private. Jason, you're an attorney and deal with these things all the time. So I think you might be in a better position to be able to explain what can or couldn't be done from that perspective.
for the pre-filing voluntary efforts, there could be some sort of confidentiality provision, be part of paperwork that be prepared if a property owner and a tenant were to get together and try and mediate. I don't think that would be a problem. It'd be pretty simple. Something that I was thinking about after Russ mentioned what he mentioned, and I did. This is something very granular. Some of y'all may know this, but the North Carolina court system has transitioned over to an electronic filing and information system in the past several months. And one of the things that underlies what I mentioned about multiple filings is now anybody can go online, North Carolina courts, and then portal, and pull up any name whatsoever and see their entire criminal and civil history far easier than prior to this process. And so if you looked up a hypothetical individual, it would take 10 seconds to say, oh, they've had 10 filings in the past 23 years, even without hiring a background check. And so to answer the first question, for the pre-filing, pre-court public process, there could be, one paragraph that says, Mr. and Ms. So-and-so agreed that everything that's discussed shall be confidential and shall not be used. And so. This is for the mediation. But the back end of that is the filing itself is more public than it's ever been by a wide margin because of the North Carolina electronic system now.
Go ahead, Sharita.
I was just gonna piggyback on Jason because I just had somebody go through this very thing. And I was looking for information and I was able to just pull it up. I think like as we're thinking through this process, I think information like what Jason just shared are important factors to include in the development of it to make sure you have like you're hitting every point in every place where potentially the information can get out. And then the last thing is, my question is, in order to do mediation, does a filing have to, is there a way to activate the mediation without the filing?
Yes, that's the point of this grant. Is the goal of this project would be for landlords and tenants to reach out. Let's say there's a lease violation, the person can't keep the house clean and they need to get it cleaned up, and there's behavioral health possibly involved, but the person's a hoarder, whatever the issue may be. This would be an opportunity for the landlord to say, hey, you know what? You need to get this done. If you're struggling, call VOA. VOA then would be able to we'd go through the process. If they qualify for the program, have a supportive services person work together and pull together a solution for them and work with the landlord to deal with the issue, opposed to taking it to court and filing for an eviction. Then if the landlord said, you know what, I just don't want to deal with the behavioral health issues, I don't want to go to court, then the landlord can say, I want to try mediation. They can reach out and go through the mediation route of this project. And if the tenant's willing to go through mediation, then the mediation would happen and they could come up with an agreement that allows the tenant out of the lease. The tenant agrees to leave, and perhaps supportive services can help make that happen. And then we're able to work our way through that process as a group to make it happen. All avoiding court and avoiding having those electronic records show up in the future. That's our goal. Is we don't want things going into the electronic records for future housing. And this is the best path that we could come up with, given the timeline that we had to get a grant put together.
So when a landlord when somebody applies for housing, I thought the only place they could see housing eviction issues was like a person's credit report. There's another way to find that information other than that? Like that landlords regularly use, like to see somebody's history of successful housing experiences?
I think that's what Jason was saying, is that if I go file an unlawful detainer, even if that case gets dismissed, the unlawful detainer is going to show up on my court record and it's going to show up that it was dismissed, but I still have that somebody filed in court against me. I don't know if there's a way to legally have that removed from my court record. I don't know if you can pay attorneys enough money to go say, hey, this was dismissed. Please remove it from my record. I don't know that that's an option in North Carolina.
No, it's not. And I'll spare you all the boring details, but for decades, there was this archaic system in the North Carolina courthouse where you looked up a name. It was even like in the old DOS system. And let's say you saw a particular name, you'd have to go deep into the paper files and assemble, some record of the individual's court history.
Mm-hmm.
But over the past months and years, as we've transitioned to the electronic system, any individual, and I would envision, let's say, a property owner of several units over time who wants to screen people the way he or she wants to, would over time become savvy and say, I'm just going to go ahead and spend 20 free seconds and look up so-and-so, and their entire court history, criminal and civil, will come up. I think what y'all are getting at as far as wiping the slate clean, that really only applies to criminal expunctions, which of course have nothing to do with the civil filing, because a summary ejectment eviction case is a civil filing. And so I've had some cases recently where I've used the new portal myself and have seen, maybe it's on some conscious level why I'm inspired or moved to mention these things, is I've seen people with 7 filings over 15 years, let's say, and they were always able to resolve it, but there's an absolute public record of 7 previous eviction civil filings.
Colin, is this a item that we need to vote on?
Yes, this is the only thing I'm asking for is whether or not the HSAC would be willing to sign a letter of support for Madam Chair Ebony Ross to sign a letter of support on behalf of the HSAC, stating that we as a Homeless Services Advisory Committee support the city's application to go after the eviction protection grant, in hopes that we reduce evictions and reduce the numbers of people entering homelessness from evictions, even though that is a very small percentage of people in the homeless system. So we need a motion to write a letter of support.
I'll make a motion that we give Chair Ross the ability to sign a letter of support for the eviction protection grant that this is writing.
And this is Sharita. I second that.
All in favor, please vote in the chat. Yes or no, and abstain if you need to. Looks like it passes. Colin?
Thank you so much. I will make sure we get a letter to Chairwoman Ross to sign, and we will get it moving, and we'll send out good vibes and prayers and hopes that we get approved. I think it's a very unique way of looking at what they're asking, and I think it's a really strong application, given that HUD is asking for us to, as communities, to break down silos and work more collaboratively to address these types of situations. So I think we check a lot of the boxes.
Okay.
I think it's a strong application.
Well, thank you so much, Colin. I look
Thank you.
forward to receiving your letter and signing it. We have about 2 minutes. Are there any announcements from the HSAC or COC members? Go ahead, Sharita.
I just want to extend the invitation and the opportunity to join our Policy and Planning Subcommittee of the HSAC. We are always eager and interested in having new voices at the table. And Russ has given us some tasks even today in this meeting of some areas of things that we can work on to make our continuum better. And we cannot do that without you. We need you at the table. Our meetings are the second Monday of each month from 10:30 to 12. There may even be opportunities for leadership. So if that is something that you are so inclined, please, please, please do join us. We'd love to have you.
And Sharita, can you share how they can join?
So as an HSAC member, our hope is always that beyond your work on like our monthly meetings of the HSAC, that you will come and be a part of either our performance management or our policy and planning subcommittee. Because a lot of the work that you see as a result in these meetings is done behind the closed doors in those meetings. So that's where the meat of the work is done. And that's where we get informed, so we know what we need so that we can respond as a HSAC. So I don't know, maybe Colin, somebody can put, or staff can put the meeting times for performance management as well. But we definitely need not just HSAC members, but COC members. You can participate. Those meetings are open, just as this meeting is open. And in those meetings, we hear everybody. So please, please, please do join. There are opportunities to have some subgroups of that group doing some specific tasks as well. So if you are a person that's interested in some of that, like for example, the expansion of more shelters, which was a suggestion by Dorothy Harden, welcome to HSAC. That is where a lot of those conversations can happen. So please, 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 ma'am and sir, join one of the subcommittees. Help us make Durham a better place for all people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm. I will say, Dorothy, apologies for not introducing you earlier. Dorothy is the newest member of the HSAC from the county appointed. So welcome, Dorothy. Apologies late for introductions.
Thank you so much, because this has been an impactful, insightful conversation. I really enjoy all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And welcome again, Dorothy. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Move to adjourn. Ms. Helen.
I can second that. This is Sharita.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.
Anthony, do I stay on? I do? Yes. We debrief now? No?
Sorry, I was trying to come off mute, but had another window.
Oh.
up. No, we're good. I'm gonna
Good.
end the meeting. Colleen,
So-
I think Russ had to leave before that last vote. So with 12 votes, it's gonna be fine to carry that motion.
It will. Okay, I thought we had to have quorum present to be able to vote on business.
No, once quorum is established in a meeting, if
Mhm.
members have to leave for any reason, the remaining members voting in the affirmative will carry a motion.
Okay, but quorum for us is 13.
I believe it's 13 at this point. It changes based on the number of filled seats, but I think
Right.
it's 13 at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to be
We can
sure. 'Cause-
verify that. If I find out anything differently, I'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you
Have
for
a
your
good
first
day,
meeting,
everyone.
Ebony.
Thank you, Ms. Collins.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations.
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.